Well, I won't comment on what's going on currently, but I was never and I'm staying completely away from that for all kinds of reasons.
I'm sure.
But I was never a big fan of the notwithstanding clause. And the reason is that if you can conceive of a situation in any other industrialized democracy where, given whatever the circumstances, the government of Prince Edward Island can introduce the notwithstanding clause and override a unanimous decision of the Supreme Court of Canada, you better start asking yourself some questions about how the hell did this thing get in our Constitution. So, everybody knows I'm not a big fan of it. I never have been. This, to me, the backbone and the enormous strength of Canada is the independence and the magnificence of our judiciary. And when the Supreme Court of Canada, in a unanimous decision, says something, decides something, it is vital that that be respected at all times. Because that's a major thrust of our citizenship, was the affirmation of the rule of law through our judiciary, our federal judiciary, and the provincial as well. So when somebody, like, as I say, the Premier of Prince Edward Island, say, he's never done it, but say he introduces the notwithstanding clause and overrides the Supreme Court of Canada unanimously, we've got a problem. So that's as far as I'm qualified to go.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Just to follow up on a different topic, Doug Ford's use of the notwithstanding clause on this bill. I understand you have a personal conflict here. Your daughter is the Attorney General of the province and presumably was consulted on this. But I mean, are you concerned in general about premiers now using this for something that seems like a comparatively minor situation?
Well, you know, you could make a case that when it was used in Saskatchewan and the Yukon and other places, that it was for relatively peripheral issues. It's there, it's a constitutional provision, it was agreed to by Mr. Trudeau, it's part of his package, and it's been used a number of times. There's lots of precedent for it. It was used in Quebec in 1988, and I would point out that it wasn't, I've read something that it was the separatist government in Quebec that invoked the notwithstanding clause on Bill 178. That's wrong. It was the Liberal government of Robert Bourassa, supported by Claude Ryan, who invoked the notwithstanding clause. So I think we have to be aware of those things and careful in our condemnations. If this weren't if this thing was evil, Mr. Trudeau would not have put it in his constitutional package. He put it in there because he was convinced it was good. And so if it's part of the package, it's not anti-democratic to use it, to invoke it if you're the elected premier of a given province. I gave you my view earlier on what I've always thought about the notwithstanding clause. There's no secret in that. I've always felt, you know, that it's, you know, to have, for me, the backbone of our democracy, the strength of our democracy, is the independence and competence of the court system in Canada. We have one that will rival any in the world. And I've always felt that once the Supreme Court of Canada made a decision that strengthened Canada and strengthened our unity, and that I was personally, I had difficulty with anybody invoking a provision that could override the Supreme Court of Canada. And that's why I opposed it then, and that's why I oppose it today. to say nothing of the fact that it was part of a package which Quebec didn't sign on to, which is no small matter. And the fact that it contained a notwithstanding clause didn't make it any more attractive to me. But in fairness, it was the Western premiers who made it clear to Mr. Trudeau that there would be no constitutional amendment without a safety valve, and they came up with the notwithstanding clause.